Hello, hello, hello. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Thank you so much for watching. I am in a new space. Oh, great. Good start to the video. So I'm in a new space. This is I'll be here this summer, probably moving to Japan in the fall. But I wanted to just got back from Japan. I am jet lagged, so we'll see how I'm going to struggle through this video, but I think we're going to do okay. I wanted to start off by just mentioning I was in Japan. This is Tesla Club Japan. Um, Met with a bunch of people. This is at a supercharger. It's a 72 kilowatt charging station, pretty close to a Tesla service and sales center, rather sales and delivery center, which I stopped in at. I just wanted to show you, like I did actually do Tesla related things on the trip. I did consider this a business trip, so a lot of fun. I think that there's a lot of promise with what's happening with Tesla Japan. I did not see a lot of Teslas in Japan, especially before I got to Tokyo. Once I got to Tokyo, I saw more, but uh, when I was in the rest of Japan, I saw one Model Y in Fukuoka, Japan, and I didn't see any in Kyoto, any in Hiroshima. Saw more Porsches, saw more Mercedes, saw more BMWs. I think there's a lot of room for Tesla to grow in Japan. They don't seem to be growing yet. I think the next generation vehicle platform is much more likely to do well in Japan. I was optimistic about there being a Giga Osaka or a Tesla factory in Japan. I didn't get a lot of optimism from the Tesla Club people that Tesla was going to do a factory in Japan. There's a lot of perception among them that Toyota's just too powerful. And I saw so many Toyotas. It was ridiculous. Toyotas are really dominant in the Japanese market. Every taxi seems to be a Toyota. A lot of Toyota hybrids everywhere. There's other cars. There's other Japanese cars, of course, than other cars, but it just seems like Toyota's really dominant. And I think the Japanese auto industry is in for a massive problem because their overseas markets are going to get crushed. And I don't think that they can survive on the Japanese market alone. So, uh, why do I think this? Why do I think that there's trouble in Japan? I think the Japanese people aren't aware of it. It's not so much that there's FUD, it's just the Japanese people are unaware of Tesla, and it may be that Tesla would have to advertise to succeed in Japan. Japan's important. It's the third largest car market in the world. You have China, you have the US, and you have Japan. Um, you could look at it by, groups, and you could say it's China, Europe, North America, whatever, and Japan's fourth, but it's kind of odd to group them that way. If you go by countries, it's the third largest market. Um, I don't know if it's that they're biased in favor of Japanese companies. It's that they just aren't as aware of Tesla as they need to be. And maybe word of mouth advert. This is a conversation I had with, I think, Ando, who was driving us around Japan, driving us around Tokyo. That maybe word of mouth advertising, which has been very effective for Tesla in the US and Europe, maybe it's just not as effective in Japan. That, an American gets a Tesla, his neighbor sees it and asks him about it. Maybe he takes his neighbor for a drive or his friends for a drive and tells him how great it is. Maybe Japanese people don't do that in the same way. So, hey, Alex, nice to see you here. So, all right, so that's the intro. And the good news for Tesla investors is that the stock is up. Now, stock is up now. The stock will go up, the stock will go down. We're up 32% in the past month. Um, I'm wearing the Tesla is the next Tesla t-shirt here. You can buy it at elonbits.com. I want to caution people two sides of this problem. First side of the problem is people see it going up and they think it's going to keep going up. And here's what we know about stocks, they go up and they go down. I think there's a lot of things in the macroeconomic situation that could cause stocks to fall, generally, stocks to fall, including Tesla. Interest rates could go up again. There's talk of interest rates going up again. There's concerns about the commercial real estate market collapsing. Certain parts of the country, commercial real estate is a lot of vacancy. I live in Florida, and I'm in Florida now, and Florida market seems to be doing well. It seems very busy here, but like San Francisco's in trouble. There's a lot of cities that have a lot of vacancies in their commercial real estate and in their commercial real estate space. This can and a lot of banks have lent a lot of money to companies that own commercial real estate. If the commercial real estate market falters, then that could cause a banking crisis. There's concerns about a residential real estate crisis. I I'm certainly not seeing that in Florida. Um, I was just watching an interview with the CEO of Redfin, and he said people aren't putting their homes on the market because interest rates are so high that if they have, like we have a 2 and 5/8 loan on our house. So if we weren't, for personal reasons, we have to sell our house, but we wouldn't put our house on the market. I can see that, if you have a loan under 3%, why would you sell your house and then buy something with a 7% loan? So Mark Plot says import taxes are high in Japan, but that doesn't explain why BMW, Mercedes, and BMW, Mercedes, and Porsche sell well in Japan. Um, Japan driver complaining is complex. That doesn't. I don't think those are the answers for Japan. Um, so anyway, I see things that could happen that could push the stock down, push the whole market down. If the whole market goes down, Tesla could go down as well. The other side of it is I see people saying, "Oh, I'm going to sell now because it's at a peak." Well, I don't see a peak yet. I just see a rise. I don't know where the rise stops. I think there's a danger of the danger on one side is, going over optimistic and buying more or playing options games because you think it's going to keep going up. The other danger is that you decide to sell and then you miss out if it goes up more. And there's certain things that I think could, this is still like you guys know my opinion that this is very low, that Tesla stock is really worth $2,000 a share right now. That the company, the value of the company, if you look at where the company's business is going, this is a massive undervaluation. I think the market cap is around $700 million. This is a $7 trillion, $10 trillion company easily. And going higher beyond that. So I easily see a 10x at some point, but when is a hard question. But so that the risk is that you sell now or you play timing games now and you bet against the stock in the short term. And then there's some kind of news that boosts the stock. So Cybertruck deliveries come early and the reviews go crazy. FSD crosses a threshold. Like we have version 11.4. It's on my car. I drove it very briefly, but I'm gonna go drive it today. Version 11.4. Maybe we get version 11.4.3. Maybe it's version 12. At some point, Tesla releases a version of FSD that's dramatically better. That even the harshest critics say, "Wait a minute, this is amazing." Because we've saw that with GPT, right? GPT was a nice little toy, and then all of a sudden, like, wow, GPT is really cool. Chat GPT is really cool. We're starting to see really impressive behavior from these chatbots, these chat AIs, and it's just like they're nothing special. This is the thing about AI, which Tesla's FSD is an AI, that it doesn't seem that exciting, it doesn't seem that special, and all of a sudden it's amazing. We don't know when that threshold is going to be crossed. Maybe megapack numbers are maybe there's something that's going to show megapack numbers are bigger than people saw. There's so many different things going on with Tesla. Maybe Tesla bot, succeeds quicker. And when you play timing games and then something good happens and the stock doubles, you're going to feel really bad if you miss out. So my attitude is just I don't play short-term timing games. I just don't buy it and hold it. That's my strategy. Worked for me. The Tesla and Air t-shirt. This is the Tesla's the next Tesla t-shirt, but the Tesla and Air t-shirt is also available. Alex mentioned Project Highland. I'm going to get to that. Let's talk about that now. Let me take this off the screen. Model 3. There's a lot of people talking about what they call Project Highland. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think Project Highland, I'm going to die on this hill probably, but I think Project Highland is fiction. I don't think there's a really good definition of what Project Highland is. What is Project Highland? It's it's a refresh. It's some big change in Model 3. Any news that comes out is a hint at Project Highland. Oh, Elon's in China. They're going to present the Project Highland car to Elon, even though Tesla China denied that they're doing anything with Model 3 lines. There's a Tesla filed a demolition permit in Fremont. I actually went and looked up the demolition permit. It doesn't say it's a Model 3 line. It doesn't say it's a whole line. But anything that is news is automatically interpreted to being Project Highland, when I ask people who believe in Project Highland, well, what exactly is Project Highland? And, look, I think eventually it makes sense that Tesla will go to, let's say, rear casting on the Model 3, and maybe eventually they'll go to rear casting and front casting on Model 3 and a structural pack. But you can't really go to a structural pack because you don't have enough 4680s. You can't use 2170 in a structural pack yet. You can't use lithium iron phosphate in a structural pack. And if you switch Model 3 to 4680, then what do you do with all the 2170 cells? There's a lot of people who want all these things going. And who said konnichiwa? Admiral Meje, konnichiwa. Yeah, I did a live stream from Tokyo with that group. And I do speak Japanese fairly well. So, dozo yoroshiku onegaishimasu, Admiral Meje. So, I just like this obsession with Project Highland. Like, if somebody can say what is Project Highland, like they're gonna change the headlights. I don't think so. They're gonna, we're seeing, there are some screenshots. There is something being tested. Okay, that doesn't mean that Model 3 is going through a refresh. And I just want to explain why I think it's unlikely that Tesla is going to do a major refresh of Model 3. Here's the issue. And first of all, Tesla just opened up orders for Model 3 long range, which has less range than the previous long range. Why? And thank you, Mark Platt, for mentioning the Daily Lie. Just for people to know, in about 45 minutes, this live stream is going to end. I'm going to do a second live stream on the Daily Lie. There's a link in the description below. I think I can... Yeah, I put a link in the chat as well. Pin that. Or maybe I can't pin that. Okay. Oh, maybe I can pin that. Okay, so it's pinned. So... I will be doing a second live stream. That's my political channel. I'm going to talk some politics, wokeism, right-wing stuff. What is a woman? A few other things. It won't be that long. Like I mentioned, I'm jet lagged. I'm doing the best I can. I don't even have my lighting set up. Like, this is the best I could do with lighting today. So, but just, why would Tesla come out with a new long-range Model 3 that is less impressive than the previous long-range Model 3 with like 25 miles less range or 20 miles less range if there's some refresh coming? Brian Roshetsky says, any other reasons why Model 3 refresh wouldn't change the appearance? Because I'm getting to that. There's no refresh. Here's the situation with Model 3. Okay, let's start with Model S and Model X. Tesla developed Model S and then Model X, and at their peak for that pair, they were selling 100,000 units a year. Model 3 comes along and succeeds and undercuts Model S. Model Y comes along and succeeds and undercuts demand for Model Y. People who were thinking of buying a Tesla and had to buy an S or an X now can buy a 3 or a Y for less money, and the 3 and Y are pretty good cars. So if you wanted to get a Tesla, and you were stretching to afford an S or an X, and now you can spend a lot less money and get a 3 or a Y, and that undercut demand for S and X somewhat. I mean, I still think there's demand, but the prices aren't low enough to sell more, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So 3 undercuts S, Y undercuts X. S and X are selling 70,000 units a year instead of the 100,000 that they peaked at. So Model 3 comes along and succeeds, and I think they were selling around 500,000 Model 3s a year. And then Model Y comes along. And if you were thinking about buying a Model 3 and now you could spend a few thousand more and get a Model Y, and it's an SUV format and you have more space, yeah, it's not as quick, yeah, it's not as efficient, but it's pretty close. And it's a great car, and in some ways it's better engineered. because they re-engineered a little bit to make the Model Y. So most Model Ys, I think all Model Ys have a rear casting, where Model 3 doesn't. Maybe you get better NVH, noise, vibration and harshness, whatever. Um, so that sort of capped demand for Model 3. And what's coming? The next generation vehicle platform is coming. And yeah, Mark Potocnik says that the 20K car will kill the Model 3. It's not that it'll kill the Model 3. It's that the upside of Model 3 is very limited. And I ask people, what's the upside for Model 3? Do you think Tesla could sell 1 million units a year of Model 3 when you have a vehicle undercutting it from below, Model Y capping it from above, and Model S capping it from above? I think the niche for Model 3 is fairly small. Now, will they eventually re-engineer Model 3? Yes. I think we will eventually see a significant change. But, people don't like sedans that much. There was a change. I love the Model 3. I own a Model 3. I think the Model 3 is a great car. I'm emotional about my Model 3. I like it that much. But and Cybertruck's going to take some demand away as well. Thank you, Mark. So I think eventually, Tesla has forecasts a future where there's a high volume of the next generation vehicle platform, and then a smaller volume of 3 and Y, and then a much smaller volume of S and X, or those classes of vehicles. Now, we don't know what the next generation vehicle is going to be like, but I think it's going to be pretty competitive with Model 3. And if you're Tesla, are you going to invest? This is something people don't understand. And Elon has talked about this, like in the Third Row Tesla podcast. Tesla has limited our engineering resources. And their engineering resources right now are being devoted to Cybertruck, to Semi, to the next generation vehicle. Does it make sense for Tesla? Let's look at Model S and X for a second. Does it make sense for Tesla to devote engineering resources to upgrading the S and X when their upside is maybe 100,000 units a year, and Model Y's maybe upside is 2 million units a year, and the next generation vehicle platform is 5 million units a year or more? It doesn't make sense to devote engineering resources to S and X at this point. And then we know they're putting some engineering resources into Roadster, and that's going to happen, maybe. But it's just if you have limited engineering resources, you're not going to put them into Model 3, because Model 3's upside is capped, and you have this other platform that's going to do 10 times as much volume as Model 3. So my gut hunch is that once the next generation vehicle platform, the engineering is complete, they're manufacturing, because once they start manufacturing, you got to continue working on the engineering to tweak things to get it right. Once that's on a path, then I think Tesla's going to have the engineering resources come back and say, and let's say they get Roadster done, and come back and say, okay, what's next? And what I see coming, and by the way, the demolition, we don't know that the demolition was for Model 3. The demolition might have been for Model S and X. We know that they stopped producing, or plans to produce, a right-hand drive, which is designed for vehicles that drive on the left-hand side of the road, for England and Australia and Japan. Tesla decided not to produce a right-hand drive Model X and Model S. Well, why would that be? Because the demand just isn't there for Model S and X. And I think it's possible that the demolition is of the Model S and X lines, and Tesla might stop making Model S and X for a period of time because the demand just isn't there. The inventories are high. They make money on them, but they don't make that much. And if they have to cut prices, it's challenging. So it's a theory that we may see the end of Model S and X production temporarily. And I see a future for Model X in particular, and Model S as well. I think they would continue making Model S because Model S Plaid is the best car on the planet. But Model X, the Model X just isn't selling that well. So if you, let's say, ended Model X and then really focused solely on producing Model S, maybe you can get that cost structure down. Or maybe you can come out with a next generation Model X that doesn't have Falcon Wing doors, that greatly simplifies the vehicle. Could you get a Model X you could sell for under $80,000 and get the $7,500 tax credit? What would demand be like for Model X if you had one you could sell profitably at $79,000 with a $7,500 tax credit? Maybe if you could, And, could you get a Model S to $55,000? What would it take to get a Model S to $55,000 and get a $7,500 tax credit? I don't know if they're going there, but I could see that. If you could get a Model S, a larger version of Model 3, down to that $55,000 price point, get the $7,500 tax credit, the demand for that would be off the charts. And maybe now you can sell 250,000 a year or 400,000 a year of the Model S and X platform. Um, so I just think there's that issue there about, where do you devote engineering resources, and the idea that Tesla's going to devote, now, and listen, everyone else thinks I'm wrong. Everyone else believes there's this massive refresh of Model 3 coming. Holmar's catalog, Moore's blog, and thinks it, believes it. Everyone else seems to believe it. I've seen like shreds of evidence for a refresh of Model 3 at best. So Omega 13 says if Toyota is able to sell both RAV4 and Corolla in the millions, why can't Tesla? Well, they don't sell a million a year of either of those vehicles. In the past, they sold a million a year of Corolla. Currently, they don't sell a million a year of Corolla. RAV4, I think, sells less globally. RAV4 sells pretty well in the US, but not millions. And I mean, Tesla is selling 3 and Y in the millions if you're going to count. Model Y is over a million a year, and Model 3, if you count over the years, then sure they can sell millions. So I love Model 3, but if I'm managing the company and I have limited engineering resources to devote, then I'm not putting them into this, even though I love this car. It's a great driver's car. It's the most efficient Tesla that exists right now. It's comfortable. It's great on a long drive. It's got all, I mean, it's not as good as an S or X on a long drive, but it's good, and it's more efficient than X by far on a long drive. So I just don't know and then now the long range is about the same range as the Model X long range. So, or Model X Plaid actually. So, there's something going on with Model 3, but I don't see a refresh. Will they switch to rear castings? Sure, that would make manufacturing more efficient. And I can't find the transcript for it. There was some presentation where I think it was Drew Baglino said that they thought they could squeeze another $2,500 to $3,000 out of the cost of 3 and Y. That there's some potential to reduce cost on 3 and Y by just improving manufacturing iteratively over, months and years. But no mention of like, oh, we can radically redesign Model 3 to get the cost down. I don't think that's the goal. Brian Roshetsky says, when the iPhone came out, remember people would say they liked their BlackBerry, their sidekick for a while after iPhone came out. It takes time for people to change their habits. Yeah. Jambay says, Tesla doesn't sell as many vehicles as all the other manufacturers, but do make more profit. Tesla's problem is manufacturing in high volume. And when you have a limited number of batteries, you've got to decide where you're going to put them. You have a limited number of resources. You got to decide where you're going to do it. They're growing pretty fast, in the ballpark of 50% a year, but it takes a while to get to 10 million when you start at zero. And, they did 500,000 or so in 2020. If you're going to grow 50% a year to get to 10 million units, it takes a while. It doesn't just happen overnight. So Mal says Model 3 long range is the most effective or efficient, probably EV on the planet, 4.8 miles per kilowatt hour, same as Lucid Air. I don't believe Lucid Air is that efficient. That's a whole nother conversation. I don't think it's 4.8 miles a kilowatt hour. I think it might be 4.6. We don't know what the battery pack is on the Model 3 long range. I think it's more like 4.6 miles per kilowatt hour. Mark says Model 3 needs refresh as a hatchback, larger market. That's not the issue. If you wanted a hatchback, you get the Model Y. I just don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see, it, does it happen? Maybe, like Alex said, don't die. I think it's unlikely that, and then there's this question of like, okay, there's some significant change happens to Model 3. Is that Highland? What does it have to be so spectacular to deserve all this discussion? So I don't see it. Okay. Mark Plot says Panasonic is building battery factory in Kansas to supply Tesla larger than Giga Nevada. I don't, I'm not sure that the manufacturing output of the Panasonic factory will be bigger than Giga Nevada. I don't know about that. Omega 13 says, all I'm trying to say is that Tesla has to find a way to defining their lineup well to avoid one model taking sales from the other. Currently, Model 3 and Y are too close in both price and performance. No, what happened is Tesla engineered Model Y after Model 3, and they figured out basically how to make Model Y for less money than it costs to make Model 3. And I mean, here's the sign, right? Like when Tesla developed Giga Berlin and Giga Texas and built Model Y lines and not Model 3 lines, that was a sign that the demand is there for Model Y and it's not there for Model 3. They chose to make Model Y in higher volume because the demand is there. If they thought there was this huge demand for Model 3 going along with Model Y, then they would have made Model 3 lines in Texas and Berlin. And they didn't make Model 3 lines in Texas and Berlin because they saw that demand for Model Y is off the charts. And demand for Model Y seems to be, I don't know, unlimited, but they're going to make 1.5 million or so this year, and a Model Y, or they're approaching 1.5 million, maybe 1.5 million next year. Maybe they get to 2 million. Heard that battery pack production was the main reason why Elon went to China earlier this week. I don't know. I mean, I think Elon went to China for more than one reason. Ryan says the Tesla Model 3 could be much more efficient if they wanted to be like making a smaller AC unit, making no Sentry mode. No Sentry mode. The FSD computer running in the background, just saying for fun. Yeah, okay, sure. But you're already coming out with a more efficient vehicle, so why waste the engineering resources on this? Get your engineering done on the Cybertruck, on the next generation vehicle platform. Get Roadster done. And then you can put engineering resources into, let's say, a revamp of Model 3. People think there's a revamp of Model Y, a refresh of Model Y coming. It's the best-selling car in the world. Why does it need a refresh? It's only 3 years old. They only started selling them in 2020. It's 2023. Robert Marquez says, oh, thank you, Robert. Robert says, did you hear anything about when Cybertrucks will start being delivered? And Alex is a hater. I can't listen to him. Alex who? I don't know which Alex you're referring to. Tesla said they would expect to start delivering model Cybertruck at the end of Q3, sometime in Q3. So, September is my best guess for when they start delivering Cybertruck. Mark Plot, thank you. Yeah, please support me on Twitter. You can subscribe to me on Twitter. I'm doing more on Twitter lately. You can support me on Patreon. You can support me on the Locals platform. You can also become a YouTube channel member. I'll be doing the Locals platform, the Daily Lie, next in about a half hour. David Casman says, second best-selling Tesla is too expensive to make, an oldest design that hasn't been refreshed. The Model S design wasn't dramatically changed when they refreshed it, right? I mean, the engineering of the vehicle was dramatically changed, but the design wasn't changed that radically. And the Model X, refresh was the exterior design changes significant in Model S and Model X when they did the refresh? I don't think so. I think they're referring to Alex, who's been in the chat, Alex Torville. Starting to see a lot of Teslas in Ireland, Model Y long range delivery late June. Lots of people just want a super cheap, efficient EV. Well, that's what the next generation vehicle is going to be, super efficient EV. Model Y is impressive on, this is an important point. Steven says Model Y is impressive on storage space compared to minivan. I looked, what was it? The Fisker Ocean has like half the cargo space of a Model Y. There's so many issues there. There's so many advantages to Tesla. The software is fantastic. I got home from Japan. I got to drive my car again. Love driving my Model X. Can't wait to drive the Model 3 again. I should have driven the Model 3, but I'm still like, I'm really, jet lag is rough, man. I took a nap before this live stream. So let's see. There's another thing that's going on. The tax credit. So Model 3, I'll put the Model 3 back up. Model 3 qualified. Every version of Model 3 is now qualified for the $7,500 tax credit. It's unclear how they did that. So we know that the standard range Model 3, or at least we think the standard range Model 3 is using lithium iron phosphate cells produced by CATL in China. I thought that wouldn't qualify for the tax credit. And the long range Model 3 getting significantly less range than the previous long range Model 3 suggests that maybe they're using lithium iron phosphate in that vehicle. But it was kind of a stretch. How do you get 333 miles of range out of an iron phosphate battery pack? That seems like a stretch to be able to squeeze that many lithium iron phosphate cells in there. Oh, you're talking about Alex Guberman. Oh, okay. Um, so the tax credit, how did they do it? So there was a theory. No, my first theory was that when we saw that the long range three initially, the new long range was not going to get the full tax credit. You know, maybe it was using lithium iron phosphate. Now that they're all getting the tax credit, there's a theory that you can average across all the vehicles. That there's somebody pointed out there's some regulation that if you have the Model 3, a vehicle platform, you can average across all the vehicles in the platform. Now, performance is clearly using 2170s from Nevada. What would they be doing with long range that would get it less range, but still have the IRA tax credit requires that you're sourcing your battery materials from countries we have a free trade agreement with, something like that, and China isn't one of them. So how are you doing that? And um, maybe the Model 3 long range is using 2170 cells. And maybe they said, we can make it with a 75 kilowatt hour pack instead of an 82 kilowatt hour pack and sacrifice some range so we free up more 2170 cells for Model Y and wherever else they need 2170 cells. That's a theory. Maybe they're using 2170 cells from South Korea, and maybe South Korea qualifies for the credit from LG Chem. And maybe they got their battery suppliers to source battery minerals from countries they have free trade agreements with. It's an interesting question because I didn't think the standard range Model 3 would qualify. And then there's also this question like, what share of vehicles that they're selling are Model 3 standard range versus long range or performance? You would think that the bulk of the vehicles they're selling are the standard range because it's so much less expensive. Hard to say. I think the demand for the long range Model 3 is much higher. Certainly the previous version of Model 3 long range that had 353 miles of range, they had so much demand they had to stop taking orders for them. Ballpark delivery figures for deliveries for Q2. I don't really make those predictions. I mean, Troy Testlike makes those predictions, and Troy does better than I do. So I am a Patreon supporter of Troy Testlike, and I do get his emails, and I did see his number, and I think he was somewhere around 440,000. He was not that optimistic, and I'd like to be more optimistic, but Troy is right so often. He's so close most of the time. He's very sophisticated in how he does it. That I would say don't come to me looking for estimates for quarterly production and deliveries. Go to Troy. Troy is really good on that. Any news on Giga Mexico yet? As far as I know, they haven't broken ground on Giga Mexico yet. I think we'll know when they do. I mean, we certainly saw they had a groundbreaking ceremony for the Corpus Christi refinery. Yeah, one of the theories that I keep hearing is that Tesla is going to use the unboxed assembly process, which is for the next generation vehicle platform for Model 3 and Model Y, and that the refresh of Model 3 is going to be the unboxed process. No, it isn't. Um, you know, it, and look, everything I say is opinion. Like, I don't know. I don't work for Tesla. I'm not inside the company. You keep hearing rumors according to sources familiar with the matter, blah, blah, blah. Bloomberg does an article and everyone like swoons over it. Like, we all hate Bloomberg. Bloomberg is constantly lying about Tesla. And when they say something that's like remotely positive about Tesla, all of a sudden you believe Bloomberg. It was a thinly sourced story. We have no idea how reliable the story was. And it ended up like, supposedly the Chinese either they were showing Elon the new Model 3 line, and then I think Tesla China denied it. So Okay, Nick Stewart, good question. What are my thoughts on Ford switching to NACS? NACS is the North American Charging Standard, which is how Tesla cars are charged. That's compared to CCS, which is another charging standard that is common in Europe and is common for like Electrify America, other EV charging systems in the United States. I think it's smart for Ford to do that. There's a problem for other EV makers. If you set up your vehicle so that they could charge at Tesla chargers, then you expose your customers to Tesla branding. So, somebody pulls up into a Tesla charger in a Mach-E, Mustang Mach-E, Ford, and he ends up chatting with the Tesla owners and realizing, wow, these are better cars than mine. F-150 Lightning pulls up and charges, and then Cybertruck's there, and they get exposure to that. um, because the Tesla chargers are branded Tesla. See, Electrify America is Volkswagen, but it's branded Electrify America. It's not branded as Volkswagen. So other EV makers can charge at Electrify America and not feel like and the companies don't feel like their customers are being exposed to Tesla branding. So that's kind of an interesting choice. Um, do I think Tesla will allow Ford to put blue Ford logo on supercharger and charge advertising? No, I don't think that's part of the plan. I don't think they care. I think that Ford, to its credit, decided it's more important to make their EVs useful than it is to worry about branding. And if they deliver a better charging experience to their customers, then I think the goal for the other EV makers is no longer to be Tesla. It's just to be number two. If you can be number two in the EV market, that's great. So I think that's the chance. Oh, dear Lord, Declan. Declan says, do I think there's any chance Tesla reverses the decision to cancel right-hand drive S and X? Paul Kelly and many others are very unhappy about this. Yes, I know. I know people are unhappy about it. No, I think there's no chance that Tesla reverses that decision. I think there's a chance that Tesla cancels the Model S and Model X. I think there's a chance that Tesla stops manufacturing Model S and Model X, that they use the 18650 cells to produce more semis and other products. Um, I think Tesla is going to stop. There's going to be a period where Tesla stops selling Model S and X. They're just not a big enough part of the company. As Tesla is trending towards 2 million vehicles a year, selling 70,000 of a version of vehicle that is costly to make and requires a lot of resources. In particular, Model X has a lot of servicing issues. The doors are always need to be fixed. I love my Model X, but I think of all Tesla vehicles, it's the one that requires the most service. So the cost of the Model X is one thing, but the cost after sale is higher to Tesla. Brian Roshetsky says, aren't all next vehicles going to have 1 megawatt charging? No, no. Cybertruck, and even 1 megawatt charging, Cybertruck's battery pack will not be big enough to take full advantage of a megawatt. If Cybertruck had a 200 kilowatt hour pack, the maximum charge rate it could handle would be 600 kilowatt hours. My new place is I'm house sitting cats and I might be allergic, so that may be the reason for the sniffles and maybe the jet lag. I'm not sure. So I think that the V4 chargers will be capable of going maybe as high as 500 kilowatt hours, maybe 600 kilowatt hours, 500 kilowatts or 600 kilowatts. There's no point in making a megawatt charger for ordinary vehicles because the max rate you can usually achieve is 3 times the size of the battery pack. So if you have a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack in a Cybertruck, then the max rate you could achieve in charging would be this is just a chemistry issue. This isn't like some other thing. It's like you just can't squeeze the electrons in faster than that. So, and faster than 3x the size of the pack. And even that is only for the first, from let's say 10% to 30%, and then you have to start dropping it down. No, I don't think Electrify America is going to switch over to NACS. There's an interesting challenge because Europe is on the CCS standard, and I don't think Tesla's even proposing to switch European chargers over to NACS. The Model S and X are discontinued. Do you think Tesla will abandon the dual screen concept entirely, converge only central screen going forward? I have Model X Plaid, refresh Model X. I have the dual screens. I don't think that the dual screen concept is that advantageous. I think in some ways it's harder for me personally, it's I tend not to look at the screen in front of me, or I tend not to use it as much as I should. So take some Sudafed for the cat allergies. Yeah, and then whatever, we'll figure it out. Um, yeah, I mean, there's this theory that Model 3 is they're gonna remove the stalks and they're gonna go with some sort of modified uh steering, yoke steering wheel. There's lots of theories out there. If they stop S and X production, they will have the Roadster to serve as the halo car for the most advanced tech. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to see the Model S Plaid continue. I think the Model S Plaid has no shortage of demand. It's just Model X is just struggling, especially Model X. I'm surprised. By the way, I think Model X Plaid, which I own, is the most amazing car in the world. It's like an S. It's almost as fast as the Model S. It's faster than almost any other car on the road other than the S Plaid. It's got lots of room. It's fun to drive. I can carry a lot of junk in it. I wish that they had a 5-seat version so I could carry more stuff in it because I like to carry stuff in it. I'd like to be able to sleep in it, but Elon mentioned Cybertruck production rate of 250,000 to 500,000 a year. I've heard that he may be downplaying the rate, maybe higher a few years down the road. I certainly think there's a market for 1 million Cybertrucks a year in the United States. I mean, I think the total pickup truck market of that full-size pickup truck market is probably around 4 million a year, and I think it's reasonable that Tesla could capture a 25% market share of pickups. I don't think they're planning to get there yet, and there's this polarizing nature of Cybertruck that maybe a lot of truck buyers don't want that look, or there's a practical side of Cybertruck that of other pickup trucks that Cybertruck doesn't quite capture. I don't know. I mean, I think if they can manufacture at scale at reasonable costs and they can get the price below $80,000 with the value it delivers in terms of one of the things about pickup trucks is that they use a lot of gas. So if you can deliver 3 miles a kilowatt hour, which is optimistic, but if you can deliver 3 miles a kilowatt hour, the efficiency compared to a diesel pickup or a gas pickup is striking. The amount of money that the pickup truck owner saves, the more miles you drive, the more money you save. Yeah, it's huge. Jeffrey Lum says, "Hey Warren, Tesla stock price just broke major resistance and closed above 200 EMA. Do you think we're in the buy zone to go all in?" Okay, so I'm not a short-term guy. I talked about this earlier. I don't play those games. Let me put that up. This is the Tesla breaking 200 and all that, and like I just don't. I don't get into this, resistance and momentum or whatever. The stock price is going to go up and the stock price is going to go down, and anybody who thinks they can predict short-term stock prices would be a trillionaire if they were correct. You'd be a trillionaire because if you can predict short-term stock prices with only 55% accuracy, right? You just keep making bets, short-term bets. Over time, your pile's going to grow really fast. That's an exponential growth path. So I just don't believe anyone can reliably predict short-term stock prices better than roughly 50% or 50.1%. It's just not doable. So the idea that somebody can make short-term stock price predictions, I don't believe it. Jupiter James, question. Thank you, Jupiter. How soon do I think people can take delivery of the next generation vehicle? I think it's late 2024, early 2025. I'm not convinced that Tesla's going to sell the next generation vehicle. I think, if they are able to get robotaxi software working before the next generation vehicle arrives, to the point where they can actually run robotaxi runs, then it would make more sense for Tesla to keep the vehicles as their own robotaxis and build their robotaxi network with it rather than sell it to customers. That's what I would do if I were running the company, if I thought I could make that work. Now, maybe they're going to sell them to other countries. I don't know. I mean, Giga Mexico supposedly isn't going to ship cars to the US, which says we're going to see a next generation vehicle factory in the US as well. Is Cybertruck a weekend warrior truck or more people going to buy for work purposes? Good question, Matt. I mean, I think if you look at the groundbreaking ceremony for the refinery in Corpus Christi and they had a Cybertruck with a special rack, that made it much more like a work truck. That rack that they showed off. Now that was a one-off. That's not like definitely a piece of merch they're going to sell, but they did say there's going to be a lot of accessories to go with Cybertruck, and there will be something like that that will make it more engineered for work. And I think the purpose is to make it very useful as a work truck. It's going to have power output and a lot of other things. I think it's going to have, what do you call it? Like a pressure. What do you call that when you can plug in things that have like air pressure tools? Hydraulic tools. Is that what that's called? Um, I think that optimistically, Cybertruck will come in under 80,000 and qualify for the tax credit. I think the early version of Cybertruck, they could charge, like I have a Cybertruck order early. They could charge me 120 grand. I'd probably pay it if it's a quad motor and has 500 miles of range. But, I'm expecting just to be clear, I'm expecting 420 miles of range, 3 miles a kilowatt hour, 140 kilowatt hour pack. And I'm expecting a price point around $80,000, but I do think they could go higher early. Yes, it was a nice rack. What's the best thing to do in Tokyo? All right, we'll go off the Tesla topic for a second. So I spent 8 full days in Japan. I took my kids. This was a graduation present. One kid graduated college. The other kid graduated high school. The day after the college graduation, we hopped on a plane, went to Japan. We started in Fukuoka. We went to 2 days in Fukuoka. The first day just to sort of try to recover from jet lag, which kind of worked. Then another day we we started our JR pass, Japan Rail Pass. We went around. If you're thinking about going to Japan, the Japan Rail Pass is going to go up in price in October or so. So if you're going to go to Japan, go now. Take advantage of the Japan Rail Pass. Its price is going to go up dramatically, and Japan Rail Pass is a great way to travel to Japan. If you're just going to Tokyo, I don't think it's as necessary. But if you're going to go to other places in Japan, you're going to one place, it's less important. But if you're going to go on the bullet train, we rode the bullet train quite a bit. Just really quick, Stephen, I think the Cyberlander is fiction. And until they actually manufacture the thing in any scale, it's not really important. We went to, Mark Plot says, Byron, the Tokyo Skytree. We went to Shibuya Sky, which is, I think, not as high as Tokyo Skytree, but we were up on the top of the building is something like 47 or 48 stories. Really, really amazing views of Tokyo. So that's a fun thing. There's so many things to do in Japan. Like I can't say there's a best thing to do in Japan. I mean, there's a lot of shrines and temples, Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines. There's a lot of gardens. So the Meiji Shrine has this huge garden. The Imperial Palace has this huge land you can walk around. Personally, like because I speak Japanese, because I lived in Japan, because I love Japan, just going around, being around people, the food. The biggest thing I noticed about Japan, it was even bigger than I expected, is the cost of living is dramatically lower than the U.S. So I'm paying less rent on this place, but this is an unusual circumstance. I'm more like house sitting rather than really renting. I'm taking care of cats and stuff, right? If you look towards I was paying $1,800 a month in rent plus a couple $100 in utilities and garbage and whatever, internet. I think I can rent in Japan for 600 or 800 a month, including electricity, water, garbage, internet, less than half the cost of renting. Now it's a smaller space, right? But I think I can rent there, a place that's commonplace for a Japanese person for less than half of the cost of renting in the United States. I wouldn't have to own a car, right? So the cost of owning a car would be gone, and public transportation is relatively reasonable. Taxis were stunningly cheap. Most of our taxi rides were less than $10, where an Uber ride, usually you're going to spend at least $20 on an Uber ride. Mark Plot says, Watashi wa Nihon daisuki desu. Nihon ga daisuki desu. Hi. I lived in Japan in 1994-95, Jupiter James. So the food, like we had a variety of food. And that's another thing that people don't realize is, like, everybody's like, are you going to eat sushi? Like, I lived in Japan for a year. I barely ate sushi. Sushi's not the bread and butter of Japan, right? It's rice, noodles, it's noodle soups, ramen soup. And ramen soup is not cup ramen. Ramen soup is really pretty amazing. And so one place we went in Tokyo, which is relatively expensive generally, we went to a place in Tokyo and had a bowl of, my younger kid had kitsune udon, which is like this special kind of sweet tofu on top of a bowl of udon noodle soup. for $3.15. A meal for $3.15 in a restaurant. Great, and it was fantastic. Um, I think the free houses in Japan is kind of a stretch. You don't want to be there. I didn't have a woman walk on my back. Yeah, parking is expensive. I think owning a car is expensive in Japan. That's true. Although you can get if you get the small Japanese cars, they're called K cars in Japan. That stands for light. Um, those cars are less expensive. And I was told there is a Nissan EV that's like probably wouldn't meet US regulatory standards. It's called the not Saturn. There's a new Nissan EV in Japan. Can't think of the name of it off the top of my head now, but $14,000. But the range was only like 120 miles. It has I think a 20 kilowatt hour battery pack. So what's McDonald's Big Mac? We didn't eat McDonald's in Japan. What do I think about Rivian? I think Rivian shows a lot of promise. Check my channel. I have videos about Rivian. I think Rivian has a decent chance to survive and succeed. Um, I didn't eat McDonald's, so I can't answer that question. We didn't eat fast food at all. I think the great thing about Japan is being able to go and have ramen and Japanese ramen. Like we were in Fukuoka, we had Hakata ramen. Hakata is a section of Fukuoka, Japan. Fukuoka is one of the 10 largest cities in Japan. Growing, thriving city. That's another thing. I keep hearing, Japan's in trouble. There are demographic issues. The population is shrinking and all that. It's true that rural Japan is shrinking, but urban Japan is still growing. We did see a lot of school children. We did see a lot of young people. There's this story that's being told that Japan is getting older, and I think it's true, but it's not obvious. And then there's this story that's being told that Japan's economy is stagnated. I saw a very vibrant economy. I think the infrastructure, I did want to talk about this. I'm going to be ending the stream in about 5 minutes, but the infrastructure in Japan, the trains, when you look at Tokyo and you realize every building is infrastructure and the volume of buildings that are everywhere, and anywhere you go in Japan, there's trains, there's homes, there's buildings that have been built. They did a pretty good job with building effective infrastructure, even with significant government direction. Where I tend to think that government choice in building infrastructure can be bad. They're very useful, and the population adapted around it. It's a very consensus-oriented society, and for whatever reason, I think the Japanese economy is going to continue to thrive because they have so much infrastructure that improves the productivity of labor. And I should just really quick mention, I'm probably moving to Japan in September for at least 90 days, and I'm going to try to make it longer. And I have this vision of doing the pod car, the single passenger electric vehicle. And I think the prospects for building the single passenger electric vehicle are a lot better in Japan than they are in the US. The cost of hiring engineers is less expensive in Japan. The market for this single passenger EV is much better in Japan than it is in the US. Um, um, Jupiter James says, how is Japanese diet so carb heavy yet there's very little obesity? I don't think the diet is that carb heavy. They eat rice, they eat noodles, they eat a lot of soups, which are, low calorie. They walk a lot. I mean, we walked about 70 miles in 8 days. We walked a lot. I definitely think dating possibilities for me are better in Japan than they are in the US, but they can't be worse. They're just so bad here. And I comment on how much H2 infrastructure you might have seen. I didn't see any hydrogen infrastructure. Yeah, I mean, there's fried rice, fried noodles, yakisoba, okonomiyaki. We had okonomiyaki. I just want to mention Hakata ramen. I was talking about Hakata ramen. It's a pork-based ramen. The broth is pork-based in Fukuoka, Japan, and it was really, really good and reasonably priced everywhere you go. The ramen soups, the udon soups, the soba soups, the noodle dishes are reasonable. The rice dishes, if you order steak, if you try to eat like an American in Japan, it's more expensive. A quarter pounder with cheese called in Japan a Royale with cheese. I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this up now. I'm gonna start live streaming again in about 5 minutes on the Daily Lie, and I'm gonna be talking about politics. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the current state of politics, I'll be over there in about 5 minutes. Thank you to the moderators, Mark Plott, Mark Potocnik. I don't know if Jim Whitehead's there today. I didn't see him. Check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. There's a link in the chat, pinned in the chat and in the description below to the next live stream. Please support me on the Locals platform. Twitter subscribership, great. Wherever you want to support me, I really appreciate it. YouTube ad revenue's down, so that support really helps a lot. And not just for me, it's down for everybody. So thanks everybody so much for watching.